Beer. Beer. Bong. Bong. Bong.
Battle
Beer.
axe.
Bong. Bong. Bong.
Battle axe.
Beer. Bong. Bong. Bong.
Battle axe.
Beers, bongs, and battle axes. Beers, bongs, and battle axes.
Battle axe.
Beers, bongs, and battle axes.
Battle axe.
Beers, bongs, and battle axes.
Hand me a beer, would you, pal?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear please, bitch.
I called you pal. What more do you want, you fucking hoe bag?
That's more like it. When you talk dirty
I
to
want
me.
one of those
a
vanilla
lager.
ones. Those were so tasty.
Those
Right?
might be down at the bottom.
Oh, of
You're
course, of course.
Agave wheat. And of course, we're having this conversation while it's recording, so I guess I'll just say, welcome to another Beers, Bongs, and Battle Axes.
Ew.
The 10th one, in fact. This is a mighty milestone for this podcast. We're in the double digits now, baby. How does that make you feel, Tyler? I'm trying to suppress a burp while I'm talking. It's very difficult.
I'm doing the same, so here we are. Makes me feel good. I feel like Joe Rogan right now.
Yeah, except for we don't have the cool guests.
I
Or
think
any
I'm
of
pretty
it.
cool.
Well, yes, we do have a very special guest today, Miss Nicole.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about probably one of my favorite subjects to blather endlessly about, Stephen King. Tyler doesn't look too happy about that.
You had to sit through my Godzilla thing, so here I am, man. Here for you guys.
Well, feel free to ask questions and whatnot throughout, because this is going to be a twisty-turny conversation.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right into it. Nicole, tell us how you first came across our Lord and Master Stephen King.
Well, I came across him as a kid. First movie I ever saw was Cujo. And, that just kind of sent me down the rabbit hole. And whenever I was about, 12, 13, I started reading his books, and I just love, how vivid he is. You can read and, actually see it. You know what I mean? I just love that about him. I love how deranged he is and just how he puts a story together. So, yeah.
That's fucking sick.
Yeah.
Tyler, what was your first experience with Stephen King? I know you're not really a reader, so movie-wise.
What was the first? I want to say it was either Pet Sematary 2, which I know isn't even his. But then I found the first one, because the second one was showing on, late night movie or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cinemax or some bullshit like that.
Yeah. But then I was like, okay, that's kind of creepy. But then I saw the first one and I was like, oh, dude, that one was way better.
Exactly.
So I want to say it was that or it was Christine.
Okay.
But I can't remember
Yeah.
right now. Both good movies.
Yeah.
Christine's a great movie, especially considering John Carpenter didn't even really want to make that movie, but he kind of had to because, studio obligations at the time.
Yeah.
And it still turned out fucking fantastic. I think that's one of the better adaptations of King's work.
Adaptation and just, I watched it, I think, last year, and just the visuals alone, when she's coming back together, I still think that's some of the
Carpenter's a fucking
coolest
master.
shots ever. They still hold up today, man.
For me, my mom's been collecting Stephen King since he started publishing in the 70s.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, I just always grew up with a bookshelf full of Stephen King books around. And one day decided to pick up It. I think I was 10, and I think I'd just seen this Tim Curry miniseries for the first time. I was like, that was fucking awesome! And my mom was like, the book's better. I was like, there's a book?
Give me that shit.
And so she hands me this 1,200-page hardback version of It. And the cover of it is just the boat going down, getting ready to go down the storm drain, and this, 3-taloned lizard, claw
Tentacle
hand
hand.
sticking
Yeah,
out.
that's
And I was just
fucking
like, sold. Give me that. And I remember, because I used to bring that book everywhere with me. I took it to school, and Mr. Prosser, my 5th grade teacher, he was like, what are you reading? Showed it to him. It's like, Stephen King's It. Takes a look at it. He's like, I don't know how I feel about your parents letting you read this kind of stuff, but the fact that you can is impressive, so I'm not going to take that. I was like, all right, thanks. Because, yeah, that's totally an inappropriate book for a 5th grader to be bringing to school.
Sure.
For
The shit you were
sure.
talking about in our It Too podcast was just the shit that went down in the book.
Oh, like
the-
Patrick Hocksetter and
Hocksetter,
stuff like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, they got kind of gay together.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
was telling Tyler about that.
Yeah.
And not only that, but just, like, the way...
He
Like, the way
killed
they...
his baby brother, too.
The way they start that chapter, though, is
Yeah.
perfect, because they were like, if Patrick Hocksetter had been born 10 years later, he would have been diagnosed with a really low IQ and would have been called what people nowadays call a sociopath. And I, like, just, Stephen King's so good at writing an opening line where you're just like, I want to hear more.
Right.
And yeah, such a good book, written by a sentient bag of cocaine.
Yep.
It's funny, he's actually said in multiple interviews that at the height of his cocaine abuse, he wrote Cujo. He doesn't remember writing that book. And he wishes he does, because he's like, I think it's a great fucking book, I just have no memory of writing it whatsoever.
That's just crazy to me.
Well, I mean,
Crazy.
just you got to think of like the kind of success that Stephen King has attained, like monetarily, is practically unheard of for novelists.
Right. Right.
And so to be able to afford that much cocaine, like getting a movie star salary for writing
Well, and right, how big was the fucking book?
Cujo, that's one of his actually smaller ones.
Yeah,
I
it
want to
was
say it's like 600 pages.
It was like medium size.
600?
Yeah.
Still though, and he doesn't remember a goddamn thing.
Right?
That's impressive.
Cocaine-fueled madness.
he is one with the cocaine. He is
He
Like I
is
said,
the
he's a
cocaine.
sentient bag of cocaine.
he's now achieved fucking what's the word?
Cocaine nirvana.
enlightenment. Yeah, nirvana.
But yeah, that book hooked me. I will admit I didn't understand good portions of it because it covered adult themes that like I had no experience with, so I couldn't really understand some of it. But I loved it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that childhood group sex scene turned me into a pervert at all. I don't think that was it.
I mean, I've read about it, but I don't.
It's even he says it's like if it hadn't been the 80s, like if I were to try and write that book today, that scene would be cut instantly.
Yeah.
But it was the 80s, I was on a lot of cocaine, and nobody was telling me no at this point.
Are we talking about like the part where like before they go in and like Beth has sex with everybody?
Yeah, when they're
Okay.
lost in the
Yeah,
sewers
yeah.
and they're trying to get out.
Yeah, and he's like, we're not gonna die virgins. Like,
Well, it's not even
practically.
that. It's the. See, that's the thing is like people just break it down to the basic concept, and the basic concept alone is what sounds super crude and disgusting.
Yeah.
But then when you actually read it, and they're talking about how like all of these kids have latent psychic, I guess would be the best way to abilities. Each has their own special ability. Like Eddie's a human compass. He know like he can find his way anywhere without like needing a map or anything like that.
Yeah.
And the problem is, after they beat it and it disappears, like their powers are weakening, and so Bev decides that they need to seal their bond, and also it's essentially a metaphor for entering adulthood.
By having sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, you can, even knowing the deeper context, you're like, that's still a little weird, but I understand where you're going with it, and I know it's not coming from a place of, I'm going to be a weird pervert.
Right. Because in his mind and in the kids' mind, they're just. It's an adult. Yeah, they're trying to be adults.
Yeah, it's the last
I get
transition
it.
into adulthood.
Gratuitous, probably, but I get it.
I mean, honestly, that's on the low side of the weird and creepy shit that Stephen King puts into his books.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm
that's
here
on
for
the
this roller coaster of awesomeness.
like a perfect example is from a book that, thanks to Nicole, I just finished for the first time, Under the Dome. Like the character of Rennie Jr.
Yes.
is one of the creepiest
Oh
fucking
my
characters
gosh.
ever. He's the son of the town's like second selectman, which is like a local board of government in New England.
Uh-huh.
Term I'd never heard of before reading the Stephen King books. You find out over the course of the book that he has a brain tumor that's slowly killing him, but it causes him to lash out with headaches and shit like that. And like one of the first chapters of the book kills this fucking lady, like just beats her to death just because she smarted off to him, and then keeps her in her pantry. just keeps the body in there. He starts, throughout the course of the book, more and more bodies show up in there of people that he's killed.
And he'll go in there and cuddle these dead bodies and do sexual things with them.
Oh, yeah. He straight up turns to necrophilia.
Their girlfriends.
He's like, they're my girlfriends.
Yeah.
I take it that wasn't in the show.
From what I've heard, Under the Dome, the show is
Yeah.
like the worst adaptation of Stephen King ever. Like, they take
That's
the
what I
characters
heard.
from the book, and then they basic concept, this weird dome comes down over the entire town, and then after that, they're just like, we're gonna go do our own thing, and it was horrible.
Yeah,
All
there was
I
so
know
much
is-
potential, but they fucked
Especially
it up.
with Dean Norris playing Big Jim Rennie.
I was gonna say that was Hank, right? From
Yeah.
Breaking Bad. Yeah. That's the only
He's
reason
so
I know
fucking
about
talented.
that show.
That guy's amazing.
And I just saw a movie recently. Fuck. Because everybody calls him Fat Bruce Willis, but I just saw him.
I can see
I
it.
saw him in a movie with Bruce Willis, and it was legit like. It's like, how do those guys walk on a set every day and be like, you're like me, but from another universe?
Like an alternate timeline where I didn't stay skinny.
It was just funny. Anyway.
So, out of how many books by Stephen King would you say you've read, Nicole?
I would say. I'm trying to think. Probably at least 11 that I have like physically read.
And with audiobooks?
With audiobooks onto that list, maybe 16?
That's a pretty good chunk.
Yeah.
Especially considering he's written over 70 novels.
Exactly. So like that's not including like short stories or anything
Right,
like
or
that,
any of the collections or stuff like that. I'm getting roughly to about halfway through his bibliography.
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting there slowly but surely. My problem is I like to reread a lot of these books a lot because I'm just like, these stories are so good. I want to go back to that world.
Well, it's like, and then you like, I feel like when you reread something, you get more and more and more like information, or like you like something
You
that
pick
you
up
missed.
things that you
yeah,
missed.
exactly. So, I like that.
What would you say your favorite adaptation of Stephen King is, out of all the ones you've seen?
Honestly, Doctor Sleep. I
That was really
I
good.
really
It was
fucking enjoyed that
amazing.
movie. I really did.
I would definitely agree with you on that, but I would have to add the caveat that until that movie came out, hands down it was The Mist for me. That movie is fucking awesome.
I honestly forgot that was Stephen
and
King.
that movie
Yeah.
out Stephen King with the ending for the film.
Right.
That was one of the most brutal endings to a horror film I've ever seen. And I was just like, well, fuck, I guess I'm going to go home and open up my wrists now. What's the point of living anymore? Just saw a man kill 3 strangers and his own son just for the army to show up. That was like the ultimate Twilight Zone irony ending.
Yeah.
Kind of like, it was on par with the one where he's the last man on Earth and he's got all the time in the world to read and then he breaks his glasses.
Right. No, that was one of the first gut-wrenching endings I think of. Like, literally, like, my stomach dropped when I saw that. It's like,
I honestly think that was my first experience with a movie showing me that, like, you can have a movie without a happy ending and it still be a really good movie.
exactly, yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, and this was a good fucking movie. Damn.
What would you say your favorite adaptation is?
Dreamcatcher.
That is really good.
I fucking love that movie so much, and I think it was really well made.
I agree. I just hate the ending of the movie
I do
compared
too.
to the book.
Okay, but like, just like the alien monster, like this like sliver one, you know?
The shit weasel?
Oh, yes, I love that scene so much where he's just sitting on the toilet. And he's
Poor
like,
Jason Lee.
you know, and the thing just comes out.
That book was the first time a book ever made me cringe
Yes.
and squirm.
Yes.
And it's because of the toilet scene.
Exactly. It was really well like described and nasty and vivid.
I don't want to be that guy, but I didn't like that movie.
You didn't?
I thought it was dumb as shit.
Really? See,
Was
I
the
like
book
really-
like that? Just
Like what?
off the wall, batshit insane with aliens and stuff?
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well.
It was written while he was healing from his car accident that almost killed him.
Oh fuck! Speaking of, damn, Misery. that would be another one.
Yeah.
God, yeah, that's a good one. That one
Kathy
actually
Bates.
got nominated for Oscars and shit, which is fucking dope.
She's terrifying. Like, when she's in a role like that, she is fucking terrifying.
I wish she'd play more villains. I know that's one of the things that keeps me coming back to American Horror Story, even though I fucking hate that show, is
I
when
don't
they
know.
cast Kathy Bates in a villain role.
I thought the first 2 seasons were good.
I was with it up until 4.
Okay, what was that, Freak Show?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the one where they lost me because I was all about Twisty the Clown. I was like, this is going to be fucking awesome. 3 episodes in, he's dead. I was like,
Yeah.
you guys fucking suck.
I don't know, like, Roanoke was shit. I don't know if you guys watched
I actually
I didn't
really
see
liked that one.
No, I did not like it.
I hated Hotel.
Okay,
I
but,
thought
like,
that
Lady
was-
Gaga's hot as shit, though.
She is, but it was still poopy garbage butthole
Yeah.
of a season. The best part of that season was Evan Peters doing his transatlantic, like, I'm H.H. Holmes, I built this whole
Yes.
hotel as a torture room.
Oh, is that where they gave him like the pencil thin mustache?
Yeah,
yeah.
he played it really well.
He did. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'll give him credit.
Yeah.
But we're getting
Yeah,
real
yeah.
off topic here.
Yeah, sorry.
I need to roll it back.
I just had to throw in Misery just so everyone's clear that
It's
Yeah.
that
fucking
movie's fucking
fantastic.
amazing.
It was really good.
It's really unfortunate that for like every good Stephen King adaptation, there's like 4 shitty ones.
Yeah.
Like the Carrie remake.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
For those of you listening at home, that's the sound of me vomiting.
Like, yeah, I don't know. I didn't hate that movie, but I don't like it when people remake shit and just do the same formula.
Yeah.
Like I think we were talking about the last podcast. There's so much shit, and there's pages upon pages. Like, you can't just tweak one little thing in your new version to make
Yeah.
it better.
Well,
or
and
different.
my biggest problem was like it lacked any of the charm that the original one had.
Yeah.
Because like they seemed like real people, but the Carrie remake almost reminds me of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, where just all these kids are just plain miserable throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you all suck. You're all depressing. You lack any of the charm of the original ones.
Yeah.
Because at least, the girls were bitches in the original one, but you also got to see, like, Susan being normal, like, with Tommy and stuff. So you're like, okay, Susan I can relate to. She's a good person who got caught up in the teasing of Carrie and is trying to make it right.
Yeah.
Whereas all those teen girls, even Susan in the new one, you're just like, I hope you bitches choke. I don't care on what, just fucking choke and die already.
And that's the thing, like, with a movie like Carrie, like, or like King Kong, like, no matter how big you make it, how big of a spectacle you make it, you know what's coming.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
You
You,
can-
know the
yes.
story.
yeah.
You know the story, it takes all
Yeah.
the shock out of it.
Exactly. And that's...
Yeah. And I've noticed there's a lot of people that like Stephen King but have never read the books too. You know what I mean? So if they were to tweak it a little bit and add something that was from the book into a movie, I think they'd be like, whoa.
And I
Right.
think part of that reason is too is because especially for the good adaptations is what makes a Stephen King adaptation really good in my point of view is when they have that ability to capture how well developed these characters in the books are because they feel like real people, and that's one of Stephen King's strong points is characters. He makes really good characters that feel like real people that
Yeah.
you would meet in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get caught up in all their triumphs and their failures,
Oh, yeah.
and it's gut
And
wrenching.
it's like when he creates a villain, you fucking hate them so much.
God, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Big Jim Rennie.
Yes.
Leland
gosh.
Gaunt.
Junior when he's like, Barbie.
Baby God.
Yeah.
Joffrey Baratheon.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's a perfect example.
No, it's
Or
seriously.
even Cersei, how Lena Headey keeps saying that people go to cons and be like, I fucking hate you, when they mean they hate Cersei.
Right.
That's just a sign of a really well-developed character. Yeah, I guess, should we get into the little game I wanted to play today?
Yes.
All right.
Oh, it's a Stephen King Jigsaw podcast?
Yes.
I want to play it too.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
You just hear maglocks. We're all going to die in here now.
Dad?
Okay, so the game I want to play today is it took us a while to come up with these two.
Yes.
Like, had to find books by Stephen King that have not been adapted for a TV miniseries, a TV show, or a film before.
Okay.
We're going to give you brief synopsises. You can ask questions about the book if you like.
Uh-huh.
And we'll see if you would like to see it adapted for the big screen. And whether you think it would work better as a film or like a series.
Okay.
All right.
I will let the lady go first.
Let's do it.
So I am bringing one to the table called Duma Key.
Doom a key?
Duma Key. It's like
Duma
a place
Key.
in Florida. Like
Oh.
DUMA.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's about this guy named Edward Fremantle. And this one was kind of strange because like all of Stephen King's books were based in Maine, but this one was not. So this one started in Minnesota, and it's about this guy who's really well off, and he's a construction like supervisor, and he gets into a pretty bad accident where a crane falls onto his truck.
Okay.
He gets like head injuries, and he loses his arm. So like while he's like trying to like recover from this, he's having suicidal thoughts, like very like abusive mood swings that leads to his divorce. So he's like going through therapy and everything, and his therapist recommends that he moves to Duma Key, and like he used to like paint and draw a lot, and like that really helped with his like anxiety and depression. So like he moved to this place, very secluded place, in this big pink house, and he refers to it as Big Pink. And a bunch of weird stuff starts happening on Duma Key. Like he feels like the shells underneath his house are whispering his name, and a bunch of like very weird things are happening. And he thinks like, oh my God, this is my head injury. I'm crazy. You know, so one night he has like this like out of body experience, and he goes and paints with his nub. Like he imagines that his hand is there, and he paints these like really violent pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And these pictures are like coming to life, and like things that he's painting are actually happening. And then he starts painting people that he knows, and they're dying. So he practically becomes like very cynical and ends up becoming a killer. Practically, he'll paint these pictures, and then people will die.
So he becomes aware that...
Yeah,
Oh.
he becomes aware because, like, his daughter, like, got engaged to this guy he didn't like, and he painted a picture of him, and he ended up getting really hurt.
Oh.
So, and then that's when he realized, like, oh, I can use this to my advantage, you know? And he starts selling these paintings, too.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's just, like, this whole long story of, like, fuckery and, like, him being, like, a cynical asshole.
And turning into a monster, essentially.
Yeah, practically.
I dig that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've always been a sucker for, like, sympathetic villains.
Yeah,
But
you know,
then-
and he thinks he's crazy, you know,
Yeah.
because like he's like recovering from a massive head trauma.
Yeah.
You know, and like he wants to be good, but then like he realizes like he can do good with this, like he can like kill people that are
Right.
bad and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
I'm
Right.
gonna kill Putin.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Right.
he practically becomes like an assassin almost.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that could work.
yeah.
I really do think
Do you
that
think
would
it would work better as like a TV show or like a movie?
I guess I could see it going either way.
Yeah, I could too.
I guess there's just only so many... I feel like if it was a TV show, it would just get stale.
It'd just drag
Like,
on.
yeah.
It would drag on.
Like,
Yeah.
The mailman looked at me wrong today.
How
Paints a
long is that
picture of him.
book?
Honestly, it's pretty short. Like,
I was gonna say if it was like one of his 1,000+ pages, then that would
Yeah,
probably
I
work
mean-
best as like a 10-part single
and
season
that was a
run.
very brief, you know, synopsis.
Right.
Just it was kind of straight to the point. But there's like other characters involved, and
Yeah.
like he makes friends with this lady next door that has dementia, and she's like she realizes what he's doing, and everyone thinks she's crazy, and she's trying to be like, this guy's killing people, and he's like, oh, she has dementia, guys. Like,
Oh,
Oh, grandma.
like she can see right through him, but nobody believes her.
I definitely think that would probably work best as like a 10-episode single season run.
Yeah, like a miniseries.
Yeah.
Is that what you said before? I wasn't paying attention.
Well, she
Yeah.
said TV series or
Yeah.
a film.
Miniseries is a good word for a lot of Stephen King's works.
Yeah.
Like,
It doesn't need multiple seasons, but
Right.
it needs more
Kind
than
of like how
3
they did
parts.
11/22/63. Like that.
Yeah,
was,
exactly,
That
just-
was honestly, I'm a huge. It was about
It's the one where James
JFK.
Franco goes back
Yeah.
in time to try and stop the
I
Kennedy
never saw
assassination.
that.
It was the book. Oh my god, I can't even like begin to describe it.
That's one of his bigger
That
books
was
too.
one of my favorite books. I was on such a big JFK hype after that. I was like,
Ha.
yeah, fucking JFK, you know. And it's like about that time the FBI, goddamn, released like the JFK files. So I was like, Nuts.
Skeet, skeet,
Yes.
Who's that from Archer? Is it Pam? Or is it Sploosh?
Yes.
Gross.
No, I like that's an interesting premise. Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought
I
that'd
kinda
be a
dig
good
that.
one to talk about.
All right. Well, my first one that I wanted to pitch to you is you'll have a little bit of knowledge about this one because you've at least seen Desperation.
Many moons ago, like
But you remember
you
the
remember
basic
it,
premise. Bunch of people caught in a town that's been...
because that was Ron Perlman, right?
Yeah.
I always
Yeah,
get
yeah,
that in the
they got
stand
pulled over.
confused.
Yeah.
I don't know why. But
Yeah.
But yeah, that
Okay,
one's
alright.
about a bunch of people trapped in a little town where this demon keeps possessing different people and going on a homicidal spree.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And that is Tech.
Yeah.
So this one is called The Regulators, written by Richard Bachman, which was in the 80s Stephen King's pen name. He was feeling in the 80s. He was feeling super insecure. Like people are, am I a good writer, or are people just buying it because I've had success before and it's got my name on it? So he started writing books under the name Richard Bachman. And so with Desperation, the book came out. He released a companion novel at the same time called The Regulators, and that was under the Bachman pen name. And what's really cool about it is it takes the main cast of characters from Desperation and it changes them around. Like some of the kids that were in Desperation are now the adults in The Regulators, and vice versa. Some of the adults are now the kids. They all have different jobs, like different careers, different life paths, but same characters in look and name. And what this is about is just a single street in suburban Ohio, and one of the kids there is autistic. And throughout the course of the story, you find out that this autistic kid has been possessed by Tack. And Tack is using this kid's imagination to bring these, like, Saturday morning, early 90s style cartoon characters to life. I can't remember what they're called, but they drive what are called power wagons. They're basically like Power Rangers.
Yeah.
And so Tack is using this kid's imagination and love for these guys to bring them to life. And they're literally just turning this town, this single street in suburban Ohio, into a Old West shooting gallery, doing drive-bys on the houses and slowly picking off the different characters. And so the whole point of the story is they're trying to band together, figure out what the fuck is going on and how they can stop it. And I feel like this one would always be really good because the way it's described in the book is they're literally, the world is slowly being turned into this poorly drawn cartoon. Looks like a cartoon that a 4-year-old drew or something like that, because it's coming from the imagination of the autistic kid.
Right.
So when these superheroes that are actually bad guys in this case are like shooting up the town, they describe the bullets from the shotgun as being like that fucking big, like around and like that long.
Right.
So it's basically like having cartoon cannonballs fired at them the whole time.
Right.
And it's really dark, it's really cynical, and just unlike Desperation, which is a super slow burn, this is just balls to the wall action from the jump.
Yeah.
And it's just really great. A book with a great showdown at the end.
I think that'd make a good movie.
I agree.
that'd be-
Yeah.
if they made it like a follow-up to Desperation, that'd be cool.
That would be super fun. And it ties into the Dark Tower in the fact that it was one of his earlier works to establish like the multiverse theory. Essentially is like, yeah, we got these same characters, but in this universe they all met each other in Nevada because of Tack, and in this one Tack invaded their little town by possessing an autistic kid.
Right.
Would you watch it?
I would. As long as you don't go like the autistic route like what the Predator did. Like basically making
Yeah.
the autistic kid a superhero. Like, but it's just his imagination that plays a part. It's just, I'm still salty about the Predator. And that's all.
no,
Like
I
the
understand.
newest one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck, let me direct the new one, please. Who's ever listening, let me do it. I can do you right.
I'll help him. I'll
God.
help him.
That and a Godzilla movie. That's all I want to do in life is just direct one of those. It'll be all right.
Those are goals to have, my friend.
Yeah, well.
All right,
Anyway.
so we're on a pretty good roll so far.
Yeah.
He seems to like both of these.
I did have a question, though.
Yes.
In regards to his pseudonym or pen name or whatever.
Richard Bachman?
Were people who read both Desperation and that book, like, wait a minute.
This is a lot like...
No, because
I'm genuinely curious.
I believe those, like, I think Regulators, if I remember correctly, was the last Bachman book to come out, because shortly before those were released, like, a reporter had dug into it and started putting the pieces together that Stephen King was Richard Bachman.
Oh.
So to get ahead of it, Stephen King just came out and announced it.
But at first, were they like, who the hell is this? This is a lot like Stephen King.
Right?
Well, he went through the same publisher, so... And since this was the 80s, there wasn't the internet, like, they were able to keep it under wraps real hard.
Yeah, so people really didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody really knew, and that was the way Stephen King wanted it.
That's awesome.
Because he was like, I need to know, just for myself and the cocaine, whether or not I'm talented, or...
It's mostly the cocaine. It speaks to me when I sleep.
They don't like us. You're not talented. You need me.
Shit, that's a Stephen King book in itself.
Yeah.
That would be meta as shit.
Yeah.
Just King dealing with his cocaine addiction.
So what is the second book you have
The
to pitch
second
today?
book I brought was Rose Matter, and this one honestly, like, shook me to my core because, like, I related a lot to the main character.
Okay.
So the main character in this, her name is Rosie Daniels, and she is being severely abused by her cop husband. You know, like, he's typical, what do you call that? Like, when somebody has, like, too much power, when it, like, gets to their head and stuff.
Power trip.
Yeah, he's just
Yeah.
He thinks he's the shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
His ego's large.
Yeah, this book right here was honestly very violent and kind of hard to read. Like, the very first chapter was about Rosie, like, literally getting beat so bad, and she was pregnant, and he threw her down the stairs, and she had, like, a brutal miscarriage. And, like, that's when she realized, like, I need to get out of this relationship. And being from Maine, very small town, like, she had a hard time, like, getting away from him, and she got on a bus, like, to the end of the line and, like, went away. So the whole time, her crazy husband is, like, trying to go after her. And there's this scene that really sticks out in my mind where, like, somebody that sold Rosie the bus ticket, he found them at the park and was like, where did she go? And, like, he wouldn't tell. So her husband's name is Norman. Norman reached over and grabbed this guy's balls and just squeezed them until they burst. Like, and this, like, that scene right there, that was, like, so vivid just reading that.
Can I stop you right there for a
Yes.
second? Because when she says that, I started saying this earlier, but we got sidetracked. That right there is the reason why Dreamcatchers was the first book to ever really make me squeamish like that. Because the toilet scene, since you've seen the movie, when he wrote that scene, like, that you're talking about how the beeve, like, just barely lifts himself off the seat to try and get a toothpick off the ground.
Yeah.
And then the shit weasel just pistons up.
Yes.
And he describes in gory detail the toilet lid hitting the beeve in the nuts and literally shattering both of his testicles.
Exactly. Just the way he describes things like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that
God.
scene, like, I don't even call it a scene, like, that part in the book when I was reading it, like, I had to reread that, like, 3 times because I like gross things, you know, and I was like, oh, every time.
Dios mío.
It's one of those, like, I should read that again just to make sure I'm not crazy.
Just to make sure I read that right. But yeah, so Rosie goes to this small town and goes to a battered woman's shelter and, like, gets back on her feet, and she goes into this pawn shop and sees this picture, and she's like, I have to have it, which kind of reminded me of Needful Things since I'm reading that right now, you know. It's like one of those things where, like, she just saw it and was like, I have to have this. And it's like, it was a picture of this, like, really beautiful, like, labyrinth, like, hedge maze and, like, this really pretty castle. Kind of reminded me of, like, The Shining almost, you know what I mean? And so she takes this thing home, and she starts realizing things in the picture are starting to change. And she's, like, having, like, all these weird dreams and, like, psychic, like, abilities, like, happening that she's never had before. And she ends up going inside of the painting. And, like, she goes through, like, the whole time, like, her husband is, like, trying to find her and everything, and he's in the same town as her, and she doesn't know it. I'm trying to explain. It's really hard to explain this, but anyways, she ends up in the painting, and he goes in the painting with her somehow. It's really strange. But anyways, so she's, like, going through the labyrinth and, like, trying to, like, get away from her husband and everything, and finally they, like, reach the castle, and like she ended up killing him in there, and then like the book ended. It was really fucking strange, but I wish I could explain this a little bit better. It's like, it's one of those things like you have to read it or you don't really understand. But I thought this movie or this book would make a good movie just because like it went into like crazy detail on like how she's like trying to fight this guy practically.
Yeah.
It was like, it's honestly a really good book.
I like that, and I like it for the idea
Yeah.
of a movie too, because just from that description, it seems like side characters aren't as integral to it, so
Yeah.
it could be streamlined to
No,
tell
it
just
totally
that
was,
story.
and it was. You have the book. It's not.
Yeah,
the
it's
biggest.
one of the smaller
It's
ones,
kind
like
of,
400 pages.
and it's like it was kind of hard to follow because it was like going back and forth of Rosie and Norman and like how he's trying to like get her and kill her practically, and how she's just trying to. She's a battered woman trying to like.
She's just trying
get
to
over
escape
it.
and live.
Exactly, and like. It was really intense. So.
Well, that's...
Yeah.
I would definitely dig that. Now,
Yeah.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go for
Does an eclipse play any part of a subplot into that book?
Like what do you mean?
Like a solar eclipse?
Yes.
So that book actually ties in to both Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne, because they all take at the same time as...
Yeah, and it's like, it's so strange. Like, she got this painting, right? And then, like, some, like, weird meteor shower happened, and she got, like, psychic abilities and, like, stuff like that, and, like, started realizing, like, this picture was, like, actually, like, moving, and, like, things were happening, and the people were, like, communicating to her and, like, beckoning to her, like, come here. You know, like, yeah, it was really
That sounds
chilling.
awesome. I'm going to have to read that, because I've read Dolores Claiborne and Gerald's Game, so I
Yeah.
need to read the third book in that.
Exactly.
Uh,
And it's like the whole time
Eclipse
she's like
trilogy.
running away from like this. He's practically like, she describes him as like a demon. She's like running away from him, and like she can feel him and see him like in her mind and stuff. Like
That's
he's
fucking
coming
awesome.
for her. So like when she went into the painting, like since like she can like see him, he came in too.
That's cool.
Yeah, and that's how she defeated him. And it was really kind of strange, but like I don't know, it just kind of shook me to my core. I love that.
No,
book.
I think the world always could use movies like that.
Yeah,
Like,
and
with
it's
that-
just like he was like beating the shit out of her and everybody in his path, and like it's one of those stories where like you want the good person to win.
Right,
You know
right.
It's
what I
one of
mean?
those empowering kind of...
And I feel
exactly.
like that would make a good movie these days, because, you know, we're all about inclusion and strong female characters
Sure,
in
yeah.
Hollywood nowadays. And going back to Stephen King being able to write well thought out
Yeah.
and like well-rounded characters.
Yeah.
Like, that's a movie that could come out where if you adapt it properly, people aren't going to be like, they just made a strong female character to, you know, pacify the SJWs. Be like, no, this is
Yeah.
a story about a well-rounded, believable woman that, you know, could be a good example of, like, little girls who want to be in movies can look up to.
Right.
Right, and
it's
as much
like-
as I hate to admit it, I mean, abusive relationships are a thing.
They are.
And
And
women
way more common
especially
than
resonated with that more than we do.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's always a good, especially when it's like that. You want
doesn't
them
feel
to kill the
forced
guy. You're
in
like,
any-
just fucking
Exactly.
kill him.
Well, it's just like I said, that opening scene of just like her getting her ass beat and like thrown down the stairs, and like the way he described the blood and everything, like like raining down her, and just like that was just like, okay, I hope this guy dies.
Reading King can be emotionally taxing.
Dude, I have almost every single book I've either listened to or read, like I've always cried.
Yeah,
like, there's
there'll be a
always,
point where I cry at
Yeah.
one time or another.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like you get so attached, you know.
I read the Dark Tower series, and by that end of that 7th one, I'm just like, no! Why, God? It's bad,
Yeah.
because instead of, you know, just one long book of getting attached to these characters, 7 of them, and, you know...
Then they die.
Yeah, then a lot of them
Then they
die, and
die.
you're just like...
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Bad.
Yeah, I wish I could have explained this one a little bit better, but like I said, it's kind of off the wall.
But see, that one sounds awesome, because it sounds like the type of story where the kind of purpose of movies is to tell stories visually, and
Yeah.
that one seems like it would be very visual heavy, probably really light on the dialogue.
Yeah.
I like those kind of movies.
Yeah.
So I would definitely be down to see somebody adapt that.
Fair enough.
I think it would be a good one.
And we'll go ahead and wrap up this little game with my last two. I have to present two to you because it's a series, and the main one that I want to see adapted is the sequel, so you kind of need the first one.
Fair enough.
So these are And these are actually two books Stephen King co-wrote with Peter Straub, who's another really famous horror author. They're called The Talisman and The Black House.
Okay.
So, The Talisman is the story of young 11-year-old Jack Sawyer. His mother is an aging Hollywood actress who's essentially on the run from her late husband's former business partner, who is trying to get her to sign her half of the business away to him. Mm-hmm. And so they've run from Hollywood, California, all the way to this little rinky-dink hotel on the East Coast. And she's dying from cancer, even though she won't admit it. And Jack wants to save his mother's life. He finds out through the help of a magic man that he has the ability to flip, which is to go to a world that's kind of like pre-colonial America. It's called the Territories. And he finds out from this magic man that the only thing that can save his mother's life is this thing known as the Talisman, which is located all the way on the western coast of the Territories, aka back in California where Jack's from. So he goes on this adventure road trip, little 11-year-old boy, I'm gonna cross the Territories and save my mom and potentially the entire world. And a big thing about the Territories is not only does it look like pre-colonial America, but everybody in the world has what's called a twinner. So if you were to flip, there would be an equivalent of you in that universe. And the equivalent of his mother in that universe is the queen of all the territories, who is also dying. And that's kind of how it works, is like your health would affect your twinner in that world. So when you die, more than likely, they're not long to follow you, and vice versa.
Okay.
And you find out through the course of the story that Jack is special. He's single-natured because his dad's business partner, his twinner, killed the queen's son in his infancy, but Jack was just barely saved, so he became single-natured. So if he flips into the Territories, he's just still himself, whereas, like, say, you were to flip to the Territories, you wouldn't actually be yourself anymore, you'd be your twinner. It's really weird. Like,
Yeah,
you'd be in
what
somebody
the
else's
fuck?
body.
How do you flip anyway? Does he just...
He starts doing
like in
it.
his mind or something?
The magic man gives him a potion to drink that he says is really just to give him the confidence to do it, because he just has this latent ability. Huh. And along the way, he meets a man named Wolf, who is in fact a werewolf, and one of the best written characters ever, because they're in the Territories. They're just like these big hulking, like, ha 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 ha, we're wolf, we're shepherds and stuff like that. And then occasionally we turn into werewolves when the full moon strikes. But it's a really heartbreaking story, because along the way he bounces back and forth between America and the Territories. He tries to spend as much time as possible in the Territories because they're smaller. So if he were to go like 2 miles in the Territories and flip back over to America, he's just traveled 20 miles. Oh. And so it's to help him get over there before time runs out. But along the way he gets hard up for money, so he starts working at a bar for a very abusive owner who just beats the ever-living shit out of him, doesn't pay him enough to actually get back on his quest. Mm-hmm. Basically holding the kid prisoner, just making him lug around kegs and shit like that, while also beating the crap out of him and taking his tips.
Damn.
And at another point, he finds himself in the Sunlight Gardener Home for Wayward Boys, an orphanage that uses them as prison labor by a crazy religious character, which is a staple of Stephen King, the crazy religious character.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure.
And along the way, you also find out that his father's business partner murdered his dad, and is essentially you find out that his dad and his dad's partner also knew about the Territories. They also had the ability to flip over, and the business partner, Morgan Sloat, he's trying to bring modern technology and modern weaponry to the Territories because he wants to colonize it through force. He wants to rule that entire world. Mm-hmm. And so that's the story, is this young boy on a quest to retrieve the talisman and save the world.
Well, I'm confused, but intrigued.
Just think of it as like Huckleberry Finn meets Mad Max.
Oh shit.
Well, why didn't you just open
Yeah.
up with that?
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm
would
in,
watch, I
done.
would watch that.
Because I never thought of it in that terms until just now.
Huh, that's fair. That'd definitely be interesting. It's one of the less cut and dry Stephen King books adaptations anyway.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and Black House is my favorite. One of my favorite King books of all time. This one follows a now 30-year-old Jack Sawyer. He's recently moved to a little farm town in Wisconsin after being the youngest person in the LAPD to be promoted to lieutenant. Mm-hmm. And ever since Jack handled the talisman when he was a boy, he's always had superior abilities. Just like he's one of the best cops ever seen because he's an amazing detective, and it's all like residue from touching the talisman. It's just like made him the luckiest man around. Like if he were to go gambling, he'd always win. Like he'd never lose. Mm-hmm. Just weird things like that. And he moves to Wisconsin, and after a few years of living there, he's pulled out of retirement when a series of murders starts happening. Mm-hmm. And these murders mirror that of the notorious New York serial killer from the early 1900s, Albert Fish.
My fave.
And as we go along, we start finding out that the Crimson King is at work in this town of Norway Valley in Wisconsin. And you find out that there's a demon possessing somebody who's committing the murders. And this demon was the same one that possessed Albert Fish and pretty much every other serial killer in history. And Jack's the only one who can stop it because of his time in the territories and his quest to save the talisman. He just has this weird ability to be the only one who can stop it. And it's a lot darker than the talisman was. And it's heavily, heavily connected to the Dark Tower series because you find out that this demon is looking for psychic boys and girls that can be brought into Endworld to be breakers, which is...
Does it tie into the Institute, do you think?
They never explicitly say it in the Institute, but I had a theory about that when I was reading it.
Light bulb.
But yeah, the breakers, they're being used by the Crimson King to tear down the beams that hold up the Dark Tower. Because when the Dark Tower falls, every universe imaginable will be pitched into chaos. And all the demons and monsters from the Discordia and the Deadlights and the Macroverse, they'll just be free to play. That's basically Stephen King's version of the apocalypse. The Dark Tower falls, and then just every universe is swarmed with Lovecraftian monsters.
Sold. I'm in. No, that sounds badass.
I'm surprised none of these have been tapped yet, because they're all really good books, and in the right hands, they could turn into fantastic movies and series.
You know what Stephen King book I'm surprised isn't a movie? Cell. I'm surprised Cell didn't.
It is.
Is it really?
It's a really shitty direct-to-DVD movie with John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson.
What the hell?
Yeah.
I've seen that. Well, I haven't seen it, but I've seen the
cover for it is bad.
I have never seen it.
It's bad.
Isn't that recent? Like 2017 or something?
Like 2016, maybe 2015.
Holy shit.
Dang.
I've
never seen it.
I didn't know that was a Stephen King A, and B, I didn't know it was straight to DVD.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
It never got a theatrical release, and you can tell just by watching it.
Huh.
Dang.
Weren't they both in
1408.
1408,
which
too,
that one's a really good adaptation. I've always felt that Stephen King's short stories are the best adaptations, like Shawshank Redemption, The Body, which that's Stand By Me. The film's called Stand By Me.
Yeah.
Because there's just enough story in his short stories to flesh out to a short film or to a full-length film without having to cut all this essential stuff that works in the book that wouldn't necessarily work in a movie, therefore making it inferior adaptation and possibly a bad movie overall.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I told him when we were talking about our It Chapter 2 on the podcast. One of my biggest problems with that, besides I've told you about my feelings of how they treated the character of Mike, is they hyped up so hard that Patrick Hockstetter's in this movie. People will recognize that name. And I was just like, what? He's one of my favorite Stephen King side characters ever. And then when he's just another bully that hangs out with Henry Bowers and fucking dies in It Chapter 1, I was like, you fucking bitches.
Exactly.
Getting my hopes up.
See, I haven't seen Chapter 2 yet. It Chapter 2, but yeah.
I don't think Henry Bowers was even mentioned in the kids' parts of It Chapter 2. Like, obviously he shows up for trying to kill Mike and Eddie, because that's an integral scene in the book for the adults, but I don't think he ever shows up again.
No.
Which is really weird to me.
It is.
Yeah, those movies, while visually pleasing, left a lot to be desired.
I like how they did that though in like the original It, like with Henry Bowers, like when he was in Juniper Hill.
Oh,
and
yeah.
everything, you know, and like, yeah, that was really cool.
It looked a little cheesy.
It did.
It comes across better in the book, because in the book it's literally described as like a big 6-foot-tall man dog with a Doberman pinscher's head breaks Henry out of the asylum. It's Pennywise, just transformed. Yeah. And they do that in the movie. It just looks weird.
It's just funny.
Cheap. But in the book, when you're reading it, you're like, that's fucking scary. And then you watch it and you're like, something didn't translate here. What happened?
We were all extremely drunk.
Aha! That makes sense. And before we wrap this up for the evening, you said you wanted to talk about the Institute, yeah?
Yeah, we can talk about it a little bit.
So the Institute is the newest Stephen King book to come out.
Yes.
Which came out, what, May this year?
No, it came out in September.
Fuck. I read through that book so fast,
Yeah.
that's why it feels... I think I'm thinking The Outsider. Was that last year's?
That was last year's. And I haven't read that one either. I haven't even read Elevation.
That's good.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Elevation, but that's
Yeah.
like a 90-page, one-sit read. It's
so
a good book.
So it follows Luke. What's his last name?
Oh, fuck, I don't remember.
His name is Luke, and he is extremely smart, like, extremely smart. What is he, like 12, and he's trying to get into college?
He's already been accepted to 2 different colleges.
So MIT, like, he's, like, extremely smart. And his parents have noticed weird things, like when he gets upset, like he can move things, like
with his mind.
Like things will go flying across the rooms, doors will shut, and just a bunch of weird stuff like that.
So, can I interject
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
briefly? Because it seems like a lot of kids especially have that power.
Yeah.
Does that still relate to, like, The Shining? Is that, like, a rolling theme throughout his books? Or is that
He
just...
does enjoy writing kids with psychic abilities
Exactly.
because Carrie, obviously,
Yeah.
Danny Torrance from The Shining, but his was more telepathic as opposed to,
Yeah.
like, telekinetic.
Okay.
Like, he can read minds and things like that as opposed to, like, moving objects with his mind.
Well, at first
Yeah.
it was TK, remember? And then he got, like, well, we'll get into that. But anyways.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in this book, it especially, it deals heavily with kids with psychic abilities.
Yeah. So, he has these, like, telekinetic things that happen only when he's upset. Like, he's not very strong. He can just move things. You
Right.
know? So, like I said, he was, like, getting ready to move to go to MIT, and these people came in the middle of the night and killed his parents and kidnapped him and took him to this place called the Institute.
Like government assassination style, silenced
like
pistols.
These old, like, FBI agents, old police officers.
Retired military and stuff like that.
They were contracted to go get Luke and kill his parents and take him to the Institute. So when Luke wakes up, he wakes up in his room. It looks just like his room, but when he goes out, it's like, it kind of reminds me of like a mental, like
a hospital, yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of reminded me of like a hospital.
Only difference between his room that he wakes up in and his room is that there's no window in his new bedroom.
But it looks exact posters, everything is the same.
Like down to the very detail.
Yeah. So they were preparing for him to come. So the first thing I remember is like he walks out of his room and he runs into Kalisha.
Yes.
And she's sitting on the floor and she's like eating
those candy cigarettes that
cigarettes.
used to be super popular.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what is going on? And she's just kind of explained to him like, yeah, this is a place for kids that have like psychic abilities and can read minds, telepathic, and
Yeah, either TK or TP. And the TPs are the higher valued of the two.
And they run experiments on these kids. They inject them with weird medicines and and see what happens, see if it increases it, see if it, decreases it.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, all of this, like, all of these experiments are going on in these kids, and I don't really know where to go from here after that.
I mean,
because, like, I could just, like, describe the whole book, but, like, that's going to take a minute.
yeah, so I guess
Yeah.
giving the briefest synopsis
Yeah.
of it is you find out that one of the injections that they've been giving the kids is meant to boost their abilities.
Exactly.
And the hospital they're in is divided into front half and back half. People who go into back half are never seen again.
Yeah.
And
They practically use these kids up until they're literally, like, retarded.
yeah, and the staff have no qualms with beating the ever living shit out of these kids if they disobey or try and resist or go against their wishes. And eventually Luke they're getting ready to send him to back half
Yep.
before he escapes.
Yeah.
He escapes
So-
and he manages to get on a train and heads south.
Yeah. And,
I'm listening. Sorry.
no, it's okay.
Sending a text.
It was just kind of, I thought the janitor helping him escape was really cool.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's actually one of the more tragic characters
I
he's
know.
written in a while, because this janitor, this maid is helping him because he finds out just through, because once they give him a shot and start like torturing him, like they have a water tank that they'll hold them down until they're about ready to pass out to try and boost their abilities. Because the whole thing, their powers peak when they're under duress. So one of those shots actually makes it so not only is he TK, he's developed telepathy as well, and he finds out from reading her mind that she's in crippling debt because her husband had a gambling problem,
Yeah.
like racked up all their credit cards and shit like that, and then just left her with the bill, and so they're given tokens for good behavior in the institute. They can use it at a vending machine, which there's one that has candy in it, and there's another one that has cigarettes.
And alcohol. Yeah.
Weed.
And these are kids. Like, the youngest one there is, like, 8. Yeah.
And they really go into that. Like,
Yeah.
some of the kids are alcoholics because of it, because
Yeah.
the way they deal
They
with
do,
it is they get some booze out of there, drink it, and they just get addicted to it because they're like, this is the only way I can
Well, yeah, it's the only way they
Well,
get
it's
through
like
the days
Cokes.
here.
Yeah.
Well, the way they describe some of these things, like some of the experiments, they're painful.
Extremely.
Like, they get these shots in, like, these shots of, like, these random medicines, and it, like, burns their skin and, like, causes hives. And
Or one that they give
seizures.
Luke in it, just like his throat closes up and he
Yeah.
can't breathe for almost 2 minutes.
Yeah. And, I mean, some of these kids are dying from these experiments, too. Like, the big country kid that got it and, like, walked into the cafeteria and then died.
Yeah, they tested him so bad that he eventually just walks in and cracks his skull falling over and dies.
Exactly.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're...
Or no, he starts having a seizure and then he accidentally kills a little girl because
Yeah.
he flails and hits her so hard that she goes into the wall
it
and
breaks
snaps her neck.
Yeah. I mean,
What
it's
the
just
fuck?
like this place where they're literally doing experiments on kids, and
It's a
like,
Black Ops facility where they
yes. One of them
it's like Guantanamo.
escapes.
They have free reign to fucking torture these kids
Yes.
to get what they want.
Because it's
Well-
unsanctioned.
Yeah,
unsanctioned, ungoverned, and it's, a lawless fucking... It's like, so it reminds me of, you played Mass Effect 2, right?
Yes.
It reminds me of Jack. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
that
Yes.
facility that they were, like, the biotic facility and
Yep.
shit.
Well,
God, I miss that
the
game.
main character escapes, and like you said, he gets on a boat, and then he gets on a train and goes to, like, he rides it to the end of the line,
Which is
like
in bumfuck South Carolina.
Dupree.
Yes,
Yeah.
Dupree. And
And-
meets a former cop who's working as what's called a night knocker.
Yes. And
That just sounds ridiculous.
yeah.
Well, it's a small
He's
town
like hella
position.
overqualified too. Like the cop's story is actually kind of fucked up.
Yeah, he has a really tragic story because he loses his job
Yeah.
in Florida. He was with Miami PD because he went out for a couple drinks after work, stayed in uniform, and then decided to go to the mall to buy new shoes. And so, of course, since he's in uniform, somebody's like, "Officer, you gotta help us. There's a kid brandishing a gun in the mall." And so, yeah, he draws down on the kid. Doesn't shoot him,
Yeah.
but came very close. But because he was in uniform and had been drinking, he loses his job over the situation.
Well, I thought he lost his job because, like, you know, the kid was being held down, right? And he was like, please get off him, please get off him. And then he shoots up.
He did fire off a round in the air, but he didn't shoot the kid.
And it shot a light, and that light hurt somebody.
Yeah, like the broken glass, cut somebody's face up, and they sued.
And it ends up, the gun that the kid had was like a
squirt gun that was spray painted.
Sprayed black.
Oh, shit.
So he got in a lot of trouble, and yeah.
Well, that beats the whole cliched, like, I was tired of being a big city
Yeah,
cop,
no.
so I
just,
moved to a small town.
No.
No,
He has a little bit of intuition, because the book actually starts with this cop. Like, the opening scene, he's getting ready to hop on, he's on a plane getting ready to travel to New York to take a security job when they overbook the flight, and they're asking people to get off. And everybody's refusing. So they're like, all right, we'll give you $2,000 in, like, basically a stipend to go live at the hotel until they get you on a new flight. Mm-hmm. And the price of your ticket. And he's just like, oh, fuck it, I'll take the $2,000 and the price of the ticket I paid.
And he's hitchhiking.
Yeah, he's just like, I'll make my way there on foot. Does odd jobs, and he ends up just staying in this small town. And is it in South Carolina or Georgia?
No, it's South Carolina.
Yeah, that's right. And he likes the gig, and just starts working there.
Yeah, it was like, that was kind of weird, because after that it went into like Luke, and I'm like, where's the cop? How does this play in together? And then when he finally...
The back half of the book, he finally shows back up.
He shows up to the town that the cop was in, and the cop was like, what the hell is wrong with you? Because like when Luke escaped, they have these like GPS tracking devices in their ears, and when Luke escaped, he cut his off. So
he cut the bottom of his ear off to get rid of it.
He traveled for like a week. He didn't have any food, any water.
It wasn't a week. It was a couple days. But you find out around this time that the institute where they took him, it's a global
they're everywhere.
Black Hand facility.
They're everywhere.
They were started as a coalition of governments after World War II.
Yeah, like Hitler kind of played into it. It was kind of weird.
To prevent anything like World War II ever happening again. And you find out that what they do is they enhance the psychic ability of these kids, and you find out that no kids are very truly strong, but the more you get into a group, the stronger they become. They become like power conduits.
Right.
And so they use these kids to do assassinations, like kill people across the globe with telekinesis and shit like that. But they just keep using them until they're essentially drooling husks of themselves. Yeah. And then they eventually die.
They call them the Gorks.
Yeah, the Gorks.
Yeah, they call them the Gorks.
Because they're just babbling, drooling idiots at that point. Their brains have been completely shattered.
They're literally... That guy was like, ah.
It's bad.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite one.
But because they're a global facility like that, when Luke's on the run, they have a network where they're able to be like, okay, we have reason to believe he got on this train. Like, all right, what train is it? It's this one, and here's its stop list. And they're like, all right, we need units at every place this train stops so we can inspect it and see if he's there.
They called them like aunts and uncles. They had aunts and uncles everywhere looking for Luke.
Like all up and down the eastern seaboard, just like drop of a hat.
Damn.
It was honestly a very emotional book. Like being a mother and like listening about these kids being like abused and stuff. I was like, oh god. So.
Well,
and the only reason
because the book is like this thing.
The only reason the small town cop gets involved is because he works doing the night knocker thing, but during the day he works unloading trains, and the place where he works happens to be the last stop for this train. And Luke freaks out and decides, I'm gonna jump off the fucking train before it gets to the station. And jumps off, lands, and is running to keep his balance. Right into a steel post.
It was kind of funny.
Gets his bell fucking rung. And the cop happens to be working that day.
Just saw it. Was like, what the fuck?
And dude just so happens to start believing him, especially since the maid that helps him gave him like a flash drive with her confession and videos she'd taken.
To expose the Institute. So practically, when Luke escapes, he's escaping to expose the Institute and practically get the rest of the kids out.
Yeah.
So. I think this would be a great movie.
I
That's
think it would make a
interesting.
good series.
You think so?
Yeah, because you could do the first season as the Institute story.
Yeah.
And then you can expand on it because at the end of the book you find out that these facilities are all over the damn
Oh, yeah.
world.
That's a good. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. How you think you've stopped the whole fucking shindig and then it's just boom everywhere.
Well, and it's just like the guy that runs the institute was like, because Luke exposed it, right?
Yeah.
And the guy who ran the institute was like, you have no idea what you just did. Like, the world is going to end now because of this.
Yeah, he actually confronts them in the last chapter of the book at the small farm they're living in at the end of it. And he's like, do you know how many how many world wars we've prevented
Yeah.
through this program? And you guys have destroyed it for everybody.
Yeah,
You fucked it up.
exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. That one is a lot to take in.
That one's a lot of moving parts, big cast.
Yeah.
Well, even non-movie wise, so what you're saying is that King can still write a book even after all these goddamn years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
That one was honestly one of the better ones I've read in a long time. It was
That
well
was a
put together.
tearjerker, too.
It was, oh my god, when Avery died, I bawled.
Spoilers.
Oh, I'm
Just kidding.
sorry.
I'm never gonna read a book ever again in my life. I don't think. So, you're good.
That's why you keep people like us around.
Yeah.
We can relate all
Right.
these stories to you.
I go on novel adventures. Yes.
But yeah, so that's our Stephen King podcast, I think,
Yeah.
for the day. I talked about everything I wanted to talk about.
I'm gonna end. I mean, they all sounded fantastic. Don't get me wrong, and I've been enlightened. But I just want to see a goddamn space turtle in a movie. That's all I want.
A space turtle?
That's all.
Yeah, Maturin, the turtle that holds the earth on its back.
Ever since he told me that, I'm like, oh fuck it. I want to see a space turtle. Anyway,
Let's make it happen.
I mean, my
all I
dream
want.
is into 27 and a half years, redo it again.
Yeah.
And do the definitive edition. It'll be a 2-season series, parallel story structure, just like the book. And it'll have everything. It'll have, like, the
No
history
holding
of
back.
dairy.
No holding
blackjack and hookers.
Maturin the space turtle, blackjack, hookers, a child gangbang scene. Not really. That part will never
There'll
make
be
it
midget
into.
stunt doubles. Oh, I'm sorry, little people stunt doubles.
That'll never make it into any filmed version of it. I just know it.
Can we do like the gay scene with like Henry Bowers and Patrick?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, that was like
Yeah,
I was just
such a-
watching in the junkyard like
It's such a weird scene because it goes from they're lighting each other's farts on fire to just casual hand job.
What? His dick was out. What am I not gonna jerk it off?
This thing ain't gonna jike itself.
Interesting. Well, I hope you get that gig in 27 years, man.
I'm gonna
I
need
just
you
want-
as director of photography for the turtle scenes.
Fuck that. I'm gonna do the mocap for that.
yes. So out of all the books we presented, which one was your fave?
Yeah, which one would you be most excited to see?
Honestly, well, it's probably because you guys talked about it the most, but the Institute does sound pretty fucking good. I'm not gonna lie.
I really hope they turn that into something and they do it right and I'm not pissed off because I will destroy something.
And I hope if they do adapt it, they don't water down what the kids go through in the Institute, because that's part of what makes it so emotional. Is like you
Yeah.
can picture it in your head, and you're just like, who would put a fucking child through that?
Yeah.
What kind of monster do you have to be?
The way that they described movie night too.
Oh yeah.
In back
Ooh.
half, yeah. That was crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, they're all interesting
Yeah.
to say the least. And like I was saying, they're not cut and dry like, oh, it's a ghost or monster or whatever
Oh,
the
yeah.
fuck. Like,
They got possessed because they used a Ouija board.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the books are cut and dry like
Yeah.
that, but the movies that are adapted from them are,
Right.
they just take the basic elements and it follows the stupid basic movie plots. I get it, but no, a lot of those, yeah, I could see a lot of those being good movies if in the right hands.
I'm surprised, I'm surprised Jim
miniseries.
McKee isn't one. Like, to be honest. I'm surprised he didn't do that.
Give it time. We're in
Yeah.
a Stephen King assance.
Yes.
Stephen King's. Yeah, there's 3 goddamn movies this year.
Yep, there
Pet
was.
Cemetery, It Too, and then
We don't
Dr.
talk about
Sleep.
It Too or Pet Cemetery.
I didn't see any of those.
Listen.
I'm too scared to see the remake of Pet Cemetery.
It's A, was spoiled in the trailers,
Uh-huh.
the best part, and B, it's really okay right up until the end.
Yeah?
It's like,
Well, and if obviously you've seen the trailers, right? So you know it's the little girl instead of Gage that dies.
Mm-hmm.
If they just left that out of the trailers. Like, let that be a twist. I would have been fine
Exactly,
with it. But now that I
exactly.
know that it's coming a month before the movie comes out, I'm like, I don't want to. I'm gonna bitch about this the whole time.
But I'll always go for John Lithgow, which is
He
what
was
I'm
good,
into
but
for.
Fred Gwynn was still better because he
No, he
actually
was.
did the Mainer accent. And I don't want to go down that road.
Nah.
You don't want to go down that road.
South
Bad
Park
things
is
happen
ruined.
down that road.
So,
Oh wait, is South Park down that road?
any hoozle. But that is a good state. That's a good King of Songs. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun time to be alive and be a King fan, especially with Amazon's Dark Tower coming out here within the next year or so. I think.
Yeah, I need to get on reading those books.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Hurry up.
Well, I'm not gonna. So we'll probably just have to do a podcast next
Yeah,
year or
we
something.
just-
you can
just
listen
telling you about
to audiobooks.
I don't do that either. Don't chastise me.
I
Look,
will.
we
I'm
all have
trying
our
to
lives.
enrich your life.
I don't like reading. It hurts.
It hurts.
It doesn't. I don't know. I
Who
just.
hurt you with a book as a child?
He was just being
Was it your
one.
priest?
Yeah.
Oh.
Reverend O'Malley.
Reverend Stonecock.
You brought back a lot of memories last night. I didn't want to say it.
Excellent. All right, we're already at an hour and like 5
riffing.
minutes, so
Yeah.
we're gonna call it. If you managed to make it through this whole podcast, like, subscribe, all that fucking bullshit. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Nicole.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah,
Tyler,
It's a pleasure to
we'll
be
see you
here.
again next week.
Sure. I'll
And
be here.
you stay classy, San Diego.
Fuck your mother.
Bye.